President Biden has directed the head of the Secret Service to review all security measures as we head into the Republican National Convention tomorrow. As we've said many times, we find ourselves in unprecedented times this election cycle. Joining us now for more and to put his historical context on this, Mark Updegrove, ABC News political contributor and presidential historian. Mark, thank you so much for joining us. I'd like you to do just that, just put this in context for us about just how historic what we're seeing is right now.
Remarkably historic and so much a reflection of the divided and dangerous time that we live in. The political climate is so different today and has been since the late teens and into the 20s, Linsey. We've seen times like this in our history before. I think the last time we saw something like this was the late 1960s. 1968 in particular was an enormously turbulent year where we had the assassinations of Martin Luther King, and then 2 months later, the assassination of Bobby Kennedy. We had major divisions in the American population. We had a youth movement. We had an anti-war movement. There was a great deal of violence and turbulence that marked the zeitgeist at that time. This is a reflection of our time, Linsey.
In incidents in the past, when a president or former president was put in harm's way like this, how did our governing institutions respond, the White House, Congress, and the like?
I think they responded in the appropriate manner, as has President Biden in this case. I think the last assassination attempt, of course, was on Ronald Reagan's life 43 years ago, 69 days into the Reagan presidency. President Reagan was shot, rushed to a hospital, and narrowly escaped death. In that case, though, the times were different. Linsey, Americans united around their fallen president, and Reagan's popularity soared. It was actually advantageous to him politically. And he got reelected several years later with a huge landslide win. We're in different times today, to say the very least.
And different times, I would imagine, too, with regard to the Secret Service and the resources and access that they have. Would you say that that is also much more advanced today?
It certainly is. And because we have had so much political violence in our past, we have more sophisticated means of identifying those who would do harm to our presidents and our political figures and trying to stop those attacks before they happen. So different times in that respect. I'll say, Linsey, I would also add that we have calls for unity at this moment in time, and that's the right thing. But it's enormously difficult to have unity in this moment. We look back at January 6th. That was a time when we all came together in the ensuing days. In the first few days, we had an attack on the citadel of democracy by insurrectionists. Americans were outraged. But soon that became politicized, and we were once again divided. So again, very much a reflection of the zeitgeist.
And we're waiting for the plane of the former President Donald Trump to land in Milwaukee at any time. Was there any surprise to you within the last 24 hours that the show must go on, business as usual, that the Republican National Convention will go on as scheduled tomorrow?
No surprise, Linsey, because this moment was so much a reflection of Donald Trump's brand. That iconic photograph, bound to be one of the most famous, at least of the 21st century, of Donald Trump pumping his fist, blood flowing down his face from the injury to his ear. It was just marked the defiance that is the Trump brand. He has defied our democratic norms and traditions. He has defied our legal system. He's defied the media. And now he's defied the attempt of an assassin on his life. So this is very much a symbol, an emblem of the Trump brand in the same manner that his mugshot was prior to this. That was the iconic photograph of Donald Trump prior to this. This is the iconic photograph of Trump going forward. Both symbolize the defiance that marks this former president, Linsey.
And Mark, just give us a sense of, were you watching this live, this rally? At what point did you find out, and what was your initial reaction when you saw that there had been an assassination attempt on the former president's life?
You know, Linsey, I was watching it live, doing coverage for ABC News Live, and saw it in real time. And I immediately called my wife and told her to put the television set on. It was clear to me that it was an assassination attempt on the president's life. And it looked so much, Linsey, like other assassination attempts have in our history. Ronald Reagan, we just talked about in 1981. You could also look at Gerald Ford. The two attempts on Gerald Ford's life in 1975, just a month from each other, both in California. The same kind of scene plays out with Secret Service agents doing their job and creating a human shield in order to protect the president's life and dragging the president off to ensure that he is in no more danger. So it was very reminiscent of what we have seen in the past. And again, a sad reflection of the political violence that is very much a part of American history, Linsey.
And I'm also curious to get your reaction because right within moments of that attempted assassination, you had J.D. Vance, who's rumored may be a vice presidential pick for Donald Trump, Vivek Ramaswamy, both of them essentially blaming Joe Biden and then his campaign for rhetoric that led to this. Your response to that?
Well, I think unfortunately, that's not going to help things. If we are going to have unity, as the president has called for, we need those on both sides sounding a message of unity. It will be very interesting, Linsey, to see if the Republicans sound that message as a party at the convention after this tragedy, after this attempted assassination on a former president, which should have no place in American life. But it is irresponsible, to say the very least, to pin this on Joe Biden. There's absolutely no proof of that, just as there was no proof that the election of 2020 was stolen from then President Donald Trump. Linsey.
And I am also curious about, we have heard a number of comparisons between this and the attempt on Ronald Reagan's life and how his popularity soared in the days subsequent. But is this different because at the time, Ronald Reagan was the president of the United States, and now you have Donald Trump, who during a very divided, tumultuous time is running to be president again. Do you think that in the same way that it was a unifying moment when Ronald Reagan was the actual president, that we could possibly see something similar to that when, again, you have this divisive time?
There are similarities. I think that the big similarity between those two things, Linsey, is you're right. Donald Trump is a former president. That makes this slightly different. By the same token, he has held the presidency, and he is the nominee of his party to become president once again. So in that respect, it's similar. I think that the parallels, in my view, is that assassination attempt on Ronald Reagan's life so reflected Ronald Reagan's brand, insofar as you saw his upbeatness, his optimism. He was wheeled into the hospital and he said to his wife, "Honey, I forgot to duck." When he went into the operating room, he looked at the room full of doctors and he said, "I hope you are all Republicans." And Americans loved that because it reflected this upbeat president. And again, in that same manner, Linsey, this incident reflects the defiance that is the Donald Trump brand.
Mark Updegrove, we thank you so much. Appreciate your analysis.